plan.
Well, it's been put in terrible order.
There we go, just go with that.
Right, found it. Welcome the two representatives from Healthy Waters here to discuss with us. I haven't quite finished yet. Shit, why didn't you put them? Right. This is all about stormwater and decisions we made last year as well as through the LTP and the annual plan. There's a bit of explaining to do about the finances and how it all works for Auckland to fit into the government's one-size-fits-all template and how it's just stormwater, not everything else. The government have produced a very tight template that works very well for water care, but it's forcing Healthy Waters to go through the same template, which is quite difficult. It doesn't actually fit that well. So Mark and Craig, it almost needs a change in title really to be just the Stormwater Services Delivery Plan, because it says a water service delivery plan for Auckland, and it kind of leads you to the idea that it's covering other things. And I read it carefully, and whilst it doesn't quite do that, it flirts with the idea of someone thinking it's covering those other bits. But it's very good. I've read it all, and I think it's very good, and I look forward to hearing you explain in detail the Stormwater Services Delivery Plan. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Kia ora, councillors. I also have Craig from Healthy Waters here with me, and he can talk through any of the specifics on stormwater elements. So under the Local Government Water Services Act, there's a new requirement for all councils to produce delivery plans for the three waters, with the first plans due to be submitted to DIA for approval in September. The intention of these are to verify that each council has adequate and financially sustainable delivery model for these critical services, as well as meeting regulatory standards and supporting planned growth and development. These plans are similar to an LTP, but just for water activities. They need to set out a credible investment plan informed by our AMPs, growth projections, and how this will be paid for. Watercare have been completing a water services delivery plan for their water supply and wastewater activities alongside their work on financial separation and the charter, which leaves council with the legal obligation to complete a plan for that stormwater activity. As there is currently no intention to change how stormwater is to be delivered in Auckland, we've agreed with DIA that we will complete their plan template using the stormwater information from the existing LTP as updated by the more recent annual plan. As the Mayor outlined, the template isn't quite fit for purpose as it has sections for water supply and wastewater that we have had to leave blank, and it presumes that stormwater services are delivered in a way that is completely financially separate from the rest of council, with separate borrowing, separate rates, etc., which is not actually the case here. DIA are, however, comfortable with our approach in reflecting our existing stormwater information into their templates, and they see this also as a helpful disclosure exercise. The next iteration of the stormwater plan will be a key strategic document and reflect any significant future changes to the delivery of stormwater services for Auckland. So today we are requesting that the governing body adopt the proposed delivery plan for stormwater, as well as delegating authority for completion and submission of the finalised plan documents to be certified by the Chief Executive to the Mayor and Deputy Mayor. Did you want to add anything, Craig?
No need to add anything at this stage. The real rubber's going to hit the road when we prepare our risk management plan, which is the important document that relates to ongoing risks, but we'll be given another, we think at least another couple of years to pull that plan together. And I see that key conversation actually occurring through the next LTP. That's the work that we're really focusing on at the moment, because all this plan is doing is really just restating what's in our current LTP and our current annual plan. And that's not really the debate going forward. The real debate going forward will be the level of investment required to support the long-term future, but that's not the conversation for today. Kia ora.
Thank you for that. I think you got to the nub of the fact that it didn't quite fit with the template was aimed at water care, where we've separated their balance sheet and do they have enough with their multipliers and whatnot again to show that they can be. But basically you're actually only a small but important part of our thing, but as part of us, you're relying on a balance sheet which is covering a hell of a lot more than just what you're doing. So it is a bit tricky. So that was a bit I was raising with people, but I've got questions from Baker, Newman and Turner. Councillor Baker, please.
Thank you. And so, I mean, I get the whole point. This is, you know, a significant focus on the urban stormwater network, but I'm worried that we don't see a lot, because in a lot of places, and so like Pukekohe in terms of and Warkworth and other places, the rural stormwater system, which isn't part of our network, actually impacts considerably on the urban stormwater network. And so I note in the attachment, it talks about that rural is reliant on service level agreements with Auckland Transport. But how can we, through this document, infer the importance of the continued maintenance of the rural stormwater network by the roadside drains, which haven't been touched in some instances for 15 years and are causing urban stormwater huge problems?
Question?
So because we're a unitary council, our stormwater budgets all take a whole of catchment approach, looking at both urban and rural. We don't separate out urban and rural. So all of the budgets in the Water Services Delivery Plan are both urban and rural budgets. And so effectively it's signing off for now on our current level of investment, including rural, although the other councils around the country are in a different kettle of fish because they won't be reporting on. So it's accepted by DIA that rural is part of our core business, and we need to continue with our whole of catchment approach to how we solve problems.
But is that, because I've read through it and I've tried to read through it and try and find where it is that we actually give some, I guess, priority, or not priority, we give equitable attention to that rural network whole, you know, in terms of the whole of network to that rural area.
Well, our standards don't differentiate between, our flood protection doesn't differentiate between urban and rural. We just look at the risk that we're managing in each catchment and make it a judgment call based on that risk.
I think you raised a good question there, and I think that with us becoming a road controlling authority, particularly in rural areas, we'll be able to allocate the appropriate between the road and the stormwater to make sure that we cover the thing properly, because the road is the actual stormwater in the rural areas. Councillor Newman, Councillor Turman, and then Councillor Hills.
Good afternoon. Can I ask? So good that DIA is interested in the council's stormwater asset management plan to the extent that we are able to provide one that's up to date and based on the best information possible within the catchments. What level of information does DIA have or understand in relation to the impacts of unplanned growth through plan changes and consent applications which trigger marginal effects on the existing network?
I think the short answer to that question is probably very little at the moment. It's obviously of significant concern to this council, the impact of these projects, but all we can do at the moment from a business point of view is just deal with the situation on a case-by-case basis as these situations arise, because by their very nature they're not planned, because we're not the ones that are in the driving seat. These are typically third-party developments that could well be going through a different process, so we can only deal with them on at this stage on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, I like what's been prepared, and it's appended in attachment A. The plan as you propose. I suppose the key thing for DIA, over and above them knowing what the asset management plan says about this network, is their understanding of the need for the developers to have to pay the appropriate price for the new infrastructure and the connections into that network, given the effects of their growth.
Yeah, so the key document you're referring to there is effectively the funding plan to support the asset management plan. So the asset management plan is very much an engineering, risk-based approach to investment. Then the secondary question is, well, how are we going to pay for this? Is it going to be out of general rates, targeted rates, or is it going to be out of development contributions or some other form of infrastructure charge surrounding growth?
Thank you. Councillor Turner, please.
Thank you. Thank you. On the back of those questions, Councillor Baker kind of answered my one, but I understand how complex, well, I don't understand, but I know it's complex and there's multiple factors coming into your decisions. But out there in the face of the public, you know, you go out into the rural areas or into the city areas, and when you're trying to find the person who's responsible, the department who's responsible for the issues you're looking at, no one will ever take ownership. Like, I always thought that it was Auckland Transport out in the rural areas. You've just said it's a catchment-wide understanding. Will what we're developing here bring more clarity? Will it give me some sort of piece of paper that has a matrix on there of where it all fits together?
So when we're talking about the role of Auckland Transport in the regional area, the stormwater network that they're responsible for is the stormwater network that supports the roading network. So where there's a catchment where the waterway flows through the catchment and the road just happens to be in the way, and so there's a culvert under the road to get the water from one side to the other, that's not an Auckland Transport responsibility, that's a Healthy Waters responsibility, because the stream was there before the road, and effectively the mechanism to get the water from one side of the road to the other is through the culvert. So our accountability is looking at the whole catchment. The big change in the legislation, of course, is that under current legislation, private streams are not deemed to be a responsibility of council. Going forward, both private streams and overland flow paths, where they are of significant risk and where the circumstances of that catchment are probably that the upstream development has caused an increase in flows, that responsibility is then going to fall on council to maintain that asset as part of the network. And that's why I'm signalling the need to revisit our whole way that we look at our network from a risk point of view, because there are a whole lot of current risks that we're sitting in the... So we get many private stream owners at the moment who say, look, it's not fair that we maintain this bit of stream, because council's gone and issued six resource consents upstream from me, and now the flows have doubled in the stream in my backyard. So the legislation now makes it quite clear that in those scenarios, that council is going to have to take some added responsibility over and above what currently exists in respect of those waterways.
Okay, thank you. But by far the majority of conversations I find myself in is about the water running parallel with the road through those miles and miles of roadside channels.
Yeah, and that is an Auckland Transport accountability, because it's that the stormwater's come off the road because the stormwater's come off the road in the first place.
Well, that's the first discussion you have, is did it come off the road or did it come from the environment beside the road?
Well, within the road reserve, if it's coming off the road reserve, it's clearly an Auckland Transport responsibility to maintain those road drains.
So, Mr. Mayor, that's where we need clarity in some of this documentation, something where everybody involved, from Mr. McElroy to me down to the worker, can say, here's the rule. Because, you know, we've got the situation where under the road, the second discharge pipe out of the cesspit is actually Healthy Waters, correct?
So we have a service level agreement that's drawn up between Healthy Waters and Auckland Transport that does our best we can to define the responsibilities and the accountabilities in relation to what sits with Healthy Waters, what sits with Auckland Transport.
I think that you're onto something here, both of you, and that us becoming a road controlling authority will lead to one way or another. It won't matter much because it's still both the council, as long as the problem's met. But at the moment, both parties are trying to avoid the problem. And so we have situations where the culvert goes under the road, which is theirs, and then Auckland Transport lift the road, which removes the emergency flow across the top of the road. In councils where you're in control both, the roading rules are that the road will dip over a culvert, so in the event of the culvert failing, it will cross the road at that point. What we've got at the moment is an event of the culvert being overfull, it turns right and floods a whole lot of houses. And then whose fault was that? And it must have been ours because we're a council controlling authority, but we're not really. So I think that the move is going in the right direction. I think that the answers that Craig has given us indicate a very good understanding of the issues that he is facing. And I think that hopefully the planners via the chief executive will pick up on the thing is that any upstream stuff on private streams has an impact on us now. So we'll be forcing those upstream people to pay suitably large development contributions to cover the fact that they've accidentally increased a risk which we didn't have before. So it's complex. This is a very good report. It kind of covers a lot of that stuff. I have confidence in what these guys are doing. I still think it should be changed to being the Stormwater Services Delivery Plan for Auckland. Makes it clearer, even if that's not what you're told to do by DIA. Very good so far. Richard Hills, please.
Kia ora. It's probably a little bit operational, but, you know, for the new council or even some high level today, I think we need a bit of a 101 of what expectations are, because especially since the floods, there's been an expectation that everything causes a flood and doing 1,000 things a day will prevent a flood. For instance, the 98,000 catch pits, I'd love to know what it means to clear them every week, because I'm assuming it's about $100 million. So just to preface this, the team on the shore tell me the 36 hotspots have been empty, the trash racks have been cleared, they get done monthly, we do this monthly, but actually if we did clear every single grate in the area, it wouldn't have made a difference because those areas don't flood. Do you have any comment on how we represent that in this work going forward? Because it's not, the levels of service are based on fact rather than just treating every single catch pit as the same level of risk.
So what we'd love to do when we have the new council come on board as part of that whole induction process, we'd actually like to have the ability to sit down with everyone, both the governing body and the local board members, and just explain to them exactly how the stormwater network operates, and particularly in light of the new legislation, which will be in place by then, exactly what we are accountable for, how we go about assigning a risk-based approach, what that's going to mean for relative investment programs going forward. It's not straightforward, and it's actually quite a significant shift from where we are today. And at least for the first time, see, the problem in the past is there's never been a proper definition of stormwater. And for the first time ever, we've now in law got a proper definition of stormwater, which is something we've been pushing for a long time. It means we can actually make sensible, prioritised decisions about where we need to invest our money, what risk, what problem we're fixing. And I think that requires everyone to be on the same page. So the opportunity to get everyone in a room and sit down and talk through these issues, I think it will be very helpful at the start of the political term.
And do you think we could also have sort of a triage of expectations? So the road will flood by design at a 50-year, or, you know, those types of conversations. Because I think when people see water on the road, they see it as a failure. But actually a lot of your stormwater, as I understand it, is designed to flow across or through, or, you know, that's by design. And I think
so the largest owner of the stormwater network in Auckland is Auckland Transport. So more roads form part of the overland flow path system than any private land, and so that's the reality. Which is why things like stormwater quality and the way that quality gets managed is so critical, because of all of the material that comes off the roads from things like brake linings and the like. If it's not managed properly, that will end up in the receiving environment. So yes, having that conversation around, the reality is, and it's a bit like the parks, for 99% of the time it can just be a road, but for that 1% of the time an extreme event, unfortunately it becomes an overland flow path. That's the way the network's actually been designed to operate.
Thank you. And just on the, and I see you've got some comparators in here, and I'm assuming it becomes a bit more directive, but on business cases on to choose such a blue-green network or a making space for water project or a wetland versus pipes, do you factor in the depreciation and replacement cost of the, because often people will say X project is more expensive because it might need more maintenance, but you might actually save money over time in pipes, or I don't know what that is, but do you?
So any business case has to take a whole of life risk-adjusted approach to what is the best option. So it's not just what's got the lowest capital cost, it's what over a 100-year period has got the lowest whole of life cost associated with it as well.
Okay, so you might have, coming to the next LTP, kind of option A, B, C, the levels of service and what that means, because I think people just assume we can do everything and it's free or something.
Look, what I can tell you with a high degree of confidence is we can't pipe our way out of the future. No one can tell me in 100 years' time what are the stormwater flows that we're going to have to manage. If you look back 100 years to where we are today, no one would have predicted the type of flows that we're seeing today and the type of climatic conditions we're seeing today. Only Nostradamus can probably tell us what it's going to be looking like in 100 years' time. So the beauty of an open channel approach is that you can have more a pipe's got a very constrained capacity, and once you've exceeded that capacity, you're into an uncontrolled overland flow path. At least with an overland flow path designed from the base, you can accommodate for some exceedances in that overland flow path far easier than you can in a pipe network. So we believe very strongly in healthy waters. Piping is yesterday's solution. Overland flow and moving back to a nature-based solution is where we need to take our network in very high-level terms.
Exactly. Dips in the road above pipes, always a good solution. Councillor Walker, please.
Got a couple of questions. One is just around how much this water services delivery plan for stormwater embraces the stormwater requirements for the the big flood events, the super flood events. So does it go there, Craig, or is it more the business as usual stormwater that we do?
So the plan that you have in front of you today, Councillor Walker, is reflective of what's in the current Healthy Waters Asset Management Plan, which is then reflective of what's in the current LTP and the current annual plan that's just been approved, which, as you know, was adjusted because of the impact of the Category 3 buyouts and the fact we had to scale back some of our future blue-green initiatives. All I'm foreshadowing was that in the future, we're going to need to revisit those plans because Council, through the legislation, will be taking on some additional risk that's not currently on Council's books. And so it's our job to put those options back in front of Council as part of the LTP to highlight what our alternatives are, what the cost implications are, both CapEx and OpEx, so that can then be factored into a Council decision, not only looking at stormwater priorities, but looking at how those priorities sit around other priorities that Council will be facing.
Okay. So the other question I've got that goes to stormwater is particularly for flood events. Increasingly, we're looking to use other assets like reserves and conceivably other parts of Council to help to deal with stormwater, perhaps by way of detention, perhaps through other techniques. So is this water services delivery plan for stormwater integrated with those other aspects of council that would comprise reserve issues and so on?
To the extent that they're covered off in the current asset management plan, yes, but obviously as we're moving into a future of bigger and brighter storms, we're going to need to look at all of our current networks and their ability to cope with climate change moving forward. And so that means that the use of things like council reserves for stormwater detention will only become more and more common over time, or the extent of detention will become even greater as the intensity of the storms increases.
Okay. The other question I've just got through you, Mr. Mayor, is quite obviously a significant amount of the stormwater in a storm comes off residential and commercial property and the like. I'm assuming that this water services delivery plan for stormwater makes the assumption that those aspects of stormwater management that could include on-site detention, alternative ways of dealing with stormwater on-site are dealt with separately. Would that be the case?
So those are what we would call demand management initiatives. What they don't do, of course, is deal with large events. You can control the stormwater that might come down on a relatively small event, but when you get a really large event, you're pretty much guaranteed 100% runoff from the whole area because there's no detention system that's going to be built that's going to be large enough to deal with the types of flows that we're talking about in the extreme events like we had in January 2023.
Okay, got it. So my last question just goes to, obviously daylighting and the like that I support, but also the matter of detention, which in a significant storm event, when it fails and is overtopped, you then have a worst case scenario. And my understanding for looking at many cities overseas is as much and all as there may be a possible aversion around pipes and the like, in order to deal with some of these super events, quite often that's a solution that's required because the detention doesn't cut it, and in some instances may even exacerbate the situation. That's
why we go through a comprehensive business casing process, because you have to treat each situation on its individual merits. In some cases, the solution will be larger detention. And just as an aside, by the way, those detention structures under legislation are now treated as dams as well, because they're effectively temporary dams when they're full of water. And so you've got to meet all of the New Zealand dam safety legislation as well, which is a very stringent threshold. That in itself needs to be factored into any decision on business casing.
That strikes me as a damn hard issue.
Thanks,
Craig.
So we'll go on to Councillor Bartley, please.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the report. I just wanted to ask about risk. And further in the attachments in the plan, it goes about that the risk that future investment levels in stormwater infrastructure may outpace the growth of revenue funding. So some of the examples they mentioned there are ageing infrastructure, replacement needs, community demands for improved service levels. I was wondering if there was a way to kind of mitigate or anticipate that, to kind of mitigate the risk.
So that type of analysis is what we want to bring back to you as part of the next LTP, so we can explain what the various alternatives are around investment scenarios, what risks they're going to be mitigating, which risks they're not mitigating. It's unfortunately not simple. It's going to be quite complicated, and I guess it's my job to put it in a way that we can then go out to our communities and explain what the various options are going to be, because there's many, for any stormwater problem, I can assure you, there's always more than one way to skin the cat. So we just have to be very open and honest with our communities about what level of service we can provide and what the implications are, and how we then would look, what levels of investment we need to do to provide a different level of service.
Okay, cool. And then I also see a lot is dependent on the ring fencing, because this is so vital. But I suppose, how do we protect it from political interference?
Yeah, good question, councillor. So as I mentioned at the outset, we have ways of meeting the intent of ring fencing without giving a separate bank account and a separate checkbook to the stormwater activity. And what we've demonstrated through the plan is that there are sufficient revenues and sufficient sources to fund that investment level. So it gives the same intent of ring fencing as it would of creating a separate entity with separate bank accounts, etc.
The one thing we haven't talked about at all, and I don't think any of us know when it's going to happen, is theoretically Three Waters is going to be subject to economic regulation, which is the Commerce Commission. Now, I don't think for many, many years they'll be wanting to regulate stormwater through an economic instrument, because it's incredibly complicated, and I don't think they've got the right, you'll need a whole lot of different skill sets until you can start measuring the social and economic and environmental risks, etc., associated with all of these investments. I've got no idea how you apply a economic regulation regime. It doesn't happen anywhere globally at the moment. Whereas water and wastewater are piped, they're effectively a closed network, where we are effectively an open network. And so it's quite different. And I just don't know how you would provide economic regulation to an open network, which is subject to so many externalities. So look, but that's a future issue. Stormwater is honestly not even on the table at the moment. The real focus is on water and wastewater, and probably in that order. Water is more advanced than wastewater, and then stormwater is way down the future at some stage.
Lee, please. Councillor Lee.
Yeah, thanks, Craig, and I'd acknowledge the work that Healthy Waters did in Noah Street, Grey Lynn, to rectify flooding of houses at the top of the hill, which is kind of surprising. There's a major problem at the bottom of the hill, as you would know, from what happened back in the anniversary day floods. An issue, and it was alluded to before, I believe, in Councillor Turner's question, is over the ownership of catch pits and drains associated with the road. It's sometimes assumed, and I've heard this several times, that part of the drainage system is actually owned by AT. Well, it's not. It must be owned by Auckland Council. The Act sets up what AT owns or is responsible for, and it's certainly responsible. Its first item of responsibility is Auckland's roads, as defined by Section 351 of the Local Government Act 1974, which means the road itself, not what's under the road, drainage or culverts, catch pits, or power cables, etc. So, in your view, is this understood by AT and Healthy Waters that they own the roads, you own the drains? Is that clear?
In actual fact, you can't have a road without catch pits. You can't build a house without spouting and downpipes. It's no different. So the water that comes off the road is part of a road. It's as much a part of a road as the subbase is part of the road. I'm very confident in making that statement.
I'm a little bit concerned about that, because the whole purpose of this painful city's Auckland super city reform was to get rid of silly niggles like that. The fact of the matter is, legally speaking, Healthy Waters, Auckland Council owns the drains, the catch pits, the culverts, anything to do with stormwater. And the idea that AT has something to do with it is just nonsense, and it's the sort of bureaucracy that prevents or hinders work being done or the maintenance work being done. And to be frank, a lot of the problems caused back in the anniversary days floods was, I think, due to this grey area where no one had an idea of who actually was responsible or owned what. That's got to be sorted out, because if you have any doubt, just go back to the Local Government Act 2009 and the 1974 one, please.
Thank you for that. I think you'll find that when we become a controlling authority, which is what we're hoping to be in the future, that might dissipate some of that. But in the meantime, you guys are working very hard on what you're doing. That's all the questions I've got. You can step back and there'll be a raging debate, hopefully not, because there was quite a lot of commentary in that, but it was very sensible. And I think the idea that Craig, you provide some form of induction at the next council so people do understand the stormwater system would be very helpful. Councillor Baker.
Yeah, and a huge amount of time for Craig, and we chat often. But going back to my questions, I just don't believe that this plan as it's written is explicit enough in terms of rural. And so, we're reliant on Auckland Transport to clear their drains, and it simply doesn't happen. And yes, we probably are going to become a road controlling authority. If we don't have something explicit to fall back on, you don't know what decisions will be made in this room as a road controlling authority, unless we've got something explicit in a plan like this to say you must maintain your part of, or there must be a desire or a direction to make sure that rural drains, as part of the whole network, are maintained. Because, as I say, we haven't done that for 15 years in some spots, and that has resulted in some fairly poor outcomes for people in rural areas, and also within urban areas where onions have flowed down into stormwater drains in Pukekohe and flooded them. And so I think we just need to be clearer in this plan. We need to be more explicit in this plan about how we deal and who deals with rural stormwater, because at the moment I've had 15 years of finger pointing. It's not us, it's them, and it's incredibly frustrating for local boards, it's incredibly frustrating for councillors, it's incredibly frustrating for communities when everyone just looks at each other and points the finger at each other and says it's them. And so I just think we need greater clarity, we need to be more explicit in this plan. We spend a huge amount of time talking and going into great detail about urban stormwater management in here, and we have 3 or 4 snippets of that we are a unitary authority and we must do this and stuff. We just don't go into enough detail in my view, and I don't think it needs a huge change, but we just need to be a little more explicit so that as a road controlling authority next time, which is a responsibility of maintaining roads and footpaths and other roading network assets, that it is explicit that there are drains as part of that. Otherwise, we're just going to keep going. We are really, really reactive. We are not proactive at all in rural areas. And we wait for it to turn to custard before we actually get out there and clean the drains or work with people in the rural community to clear the drains, like the farmers, like the growers, putting in silt controls, etc. So I just think we need to be more explicit. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We'll take a good note of that. I think that if we adopt this, it still allows us to, if and when we become a road authority, to review it and alter those words, because I think you're probably right, it's a bit weak there. Councillor Turner.
Mr Mayor, I just want to say I'm looking forward to becoming a road controlling authority, if that's going to help us put this together. And with absolute all seriousness, I cannot back up what Mr Baker, Councillor Baker says any stronger than I really support everything he says.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, it's important.
Okay, me too, and probably Councillor Stewart, who's next, who's
Thank you.
in charge of a lot of private drains in Howick.
Yeah, no, I'd just like to say that I've found healthy water's pretty good. So you can take that back, Craig. But one of the things that we used to do in Manukau, and I think, Phil, when you used to work at Manukau, I'm sure you'll remember, we used to have do the smoke tests. We'd go around and all the legal connections that would get sewage into the stormwater, so get into the... So what I'm suggesting, maybe we should be looking at doing that in certain areas, and I think we'll probably pick up a whole lot of illegal connections, and those people can be fined, and that's money that'll go towards helping the healthy water people. So that's just something that I think maybe we should do, and I think you'll find, I can remember before 2010, and I think Councillor Newman will probably remember as well, I can remember in Cockle Bay, I think we picked up a whole lot of people that had illegal connections, so they're all over the place, and I think that's one, if you're going to do something, you may as well ping the people that are causing the problem, and all the sewage is all getting into the stormwater, and that's making it all unhealthy. So if we can perhaps look at that, that'll be great.
Good flog 'em till they hurt speech. Thank you very much for that. Councillor Sayers cannot repress himself. What is it about you today?
It's just because of bees. It's got me, I see that you've got delegated authority to yourself, your worship, the deputy mayor and the chief executive to make some completion of the submission. So I would feel I wouldn't sleep well tonight if I didn't speak up now and support Councillor Baker's request there to try and, rather than waiting until we're road controlling authority, Wayne, is to get something in there early now, just to, I think you've got enough voices around the table just to give you that steer. I'm sure you've taken that on board, but I'm just saying that you might have the opportunity to do that now rather than
I think
later.
the chief executive and I have heard this, and we'll insert some gumboots in the appropriate places. Thank you. Eh? Red bands, yeah, red bands from counties. All right. Oh, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour of adopting this, please say aye. To the contrary, thank you very much for your work there. They've all buggered off. Not surprising.